Well, welcome to the Think and Grow Rich 6-week webinar. My name's Steve Lundy, and I'll be your humble host for this evening's call. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the call. So we've got a few people on. I think we'll leave. It sounds like the lines are pretty quiet, so we'll just leave everybody off mute. If you do see some noise starting to happen on your end, if you could just click on the little green microphone button and mute yourself, that would be appreciated. Just lends to better quality for the recording once you're listening back. Okay, so we've got a lot of material to cover tonight, so let's just get on with this, and we'll talk a little bit about what we did last week. So last week we discussed Chapter 8, and Chapter 8 was the chapter on decision. And we started off by discussing decision-making habits. Let me just catch up here. There's my gratuitous host shot. Let's let that play out. I don't know why we put those things in. Yeah, so we talked about decision, and in particular, decision-making habits and how these habits impact the level of success that we can achieve. This led us into the topic on how other people's opinions can affect our decisions if we're not careful. So we talked a little bit about not, holding your goals and your dreams tight to your chest unless you're in the company of like-minded people who understand your infinite potential. So we also talked about failure and what it means to fail forward. Then we finished the chapter by talking about risks as it relates to our decision-making process. From there, we turned to the next chapter, which was the chapter on persistence, and that was, and we said that for a lot of people, this is a turning point. It was for me. I spoke a little bit about that when I was reading the book for the first time. It's a chapter on persistence where a lot of people they really start to look inward. And the book takes on it gets a little bit bigger for them. There's a lot more aha moments, a lot more meaning to what Hill is parlaying in the book. And most people agree that it continues right up to the end. There's very few people who I've talked to who don't get that from this chapter. Anyways, so let's talk a little bit. First on the agenda for this chapter was to deal with the role of persistence and definiteness of purpose. And then the first test in persistence was the point in the book that I mentioned really made me take an honest look at myself, and I realized for the first time that I needed to work on this, on persistence. After that, we talked about poverty consciousness, and then we touched on something that we call successful persistence. Now, along with some general points of discussion along the way, we ended the webinar talking about some of the common mistakes that people make when they're setting their goals. So that was last week, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed hosting that webinar. Okay, so let's have a look at what we're up to today. This week we are going to discuss Chapter 12, the subconscious mind. And we'll start off by discussing the power of the subconscious mind, and we'll speak a little bit about the role that faith plays. We talked a little bit about faith, quite a bit about faith actually earlier on in the webinar. And tonight we'll talk specifically about the role that faith plays in this part of your mind, the subconscious mind. This week we'll also talk about genetic and environmental programming that exists within the subconscious mind. We'll also talk about the subconscious mind as the godlike part of our being. And after that, we'll discuss methods of shutting off the flow of negative thought impulses to this part of our mind. Hugely important. And one of the reasons why people are, continue to stay where they've always been. We'll spend a few minutes talking about the 7 major positive and negative emotions that Napoleon Hill refers to in this chapter. Very interesting. And then we'll finish the chapter by talking about how faith and fear make poor bedfellows, as Hill says. And once again, we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's just go ahead and get started. So before we go to the book, I'd just like to say a few words about the power of the subconscious mind. And really, it was explained to me this way. If you put both feet flat on the floor, and if you look down at your feet and imagine the space that your feet covers is the equivalent to the power of your conscious mind. Meanwhile, the remaining floor space in the room that you're in would represent the power of the subconscious mind. In fact, the remaining floor space in the rest of your entire home would represent the power of the subconscious mind. And in fact, the power of the subconscious mind, when compared to the space that your feet are covering, would really represent, 11 square miles of space around the space covered by your feet. That's what represents the power of the subconscious mind as we know it today. And in the movie, What the Bleep, I don't know if anybody saw that movie. But in the movie What the Bleep, they spoke about it this way. They taught us that at any given second, our subconscious mind is processing 400 billion bits of information. 400 billion is a number that I can't even comprehend, let alone say. And they went on to say that our conscious mind is capable of processing a mere 2,000 bits of information per second. And we'll touch on this a little bit more in a few minutes, but it really does give you the impression that all of the horsepower lies in the subconscious mind. And while I believe that it's true that all of the horsepower really does lie in this part of our mind, the thing that we really want to understand is that the subconscious mind has a blind spot. And once you know what that blind spot is, you can really begin to harness all of the horsepower. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But let's quickly flip back to page number 42 in our special edition ebook. And specifically, let's look at paragraph 1. And Napoleon Hill says here that faith is the head chemist of the mind. When faith is blended with the vibration of thought, the subconscious mind instantly picks up the vibration, translates it into its spiritual equivalent, and transmits it to infinite intelligence, as in the case of prayer. So let's take a minute here and talk about what is really, really meant by this paragraph, because I just know that it's very easy to go by something like a paragraph like this and not completely understand what Hill is trying to share with us here. So it warrants a little bit more discussion. And I think it's first important to understand that when he says that faith is blended with the vibration of thought, because ordinary and fleeting thoughts really contain no power at all, it's really the blending of thought with emotion, specifically the emotion of faith being the most powerful emotion. This blending actually causes that thought to be picked up by the subconscious mind. It really is the subconscious mind that translates thought into its spiritual equivalent. And the very second this happens, we're connected to an infinite intelligence. The subconscious mind is the intermediary between your thoughts and the always listening universe. You see, when we pray, there's an assumption that someone or something is listening. It's in this way that your desires are transmuted to the infinite intelligence. Napoleon Hill goes on to explain that this is exactly what happens in the case of prayer. I just think it's great that Hill lays it out here in black and white, that we can connect and transmit these thoughts of infinite intelligence anytime we choose. And right here, I'd like to mention that we're going to refer to the stick person diagram many times today, and we'll use it to hopefully clearly illustrate, or I'll use it to clearly illustrate the reasoning behind this last quote. For example, if we look here on the screen, we see part 1 on the top part of the stick person. And if you recall, this is the subconscious mind, or is the conscious mind. The subconscious mind, or part 2, represents our spiritual side. This is where spirit lies. The early Greeks called this our heart of hearts, and we've been taught almost since the beginning of time that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So whenever we are dealing with the subconscious mind, we're actually dealing with the true essence of spirit, the true essence of who we really are. Early Greeks said this was our heart of hearts, and it really makes me stop and realize that some of the information that we're sharing literally dates back thousands of years, and it's just so fascinating for me. And if we look back on page number 64, the second paragraph here is also very fascinating. Napoleon Hill says here about the subconscious mind, it receives and files sense impressions of thought, regardless of their nature. You may voluntarily plant in your subconscious mind any plan, thought, or purpose which you desire to translate into its physical or monetary equivalent. The subconscious acts first on the dominating desires which have been mixed with emotional feeling, such as faith. And you remember early in the webinar we talked about faith as the fuel, to manifest the things that we desire, our ideas. And faith is probably the strongest emotion of the subconscious mind. Now, we see here that we have been genetically and environmentally programmed by our ancestors' past conditioning. This diagram here is great. It also represents a baby or a young life before the age of reason. You see, the conscious mind doesn't really develop until around 6 to 9 years old. And there's a lot of programming happening during this time, and as you can see on the screen here, a lot of this programming is unsolicited. And it can come from anywhere. It can come typically from authorities, and there are many authorities in a young child's life. So, for example, you'd get this programming from your parents or your teachers, maybe your religious leaders, maybe older siblings, or even simply friends of your family that were part of your life or their life at the time that you were around this age. So, of course, there's a lot of conditioning from great-grandparents, also a lot of conditioning from great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, grandparents. And the funny part is that sometimes this programming will even skip a generation, this genetic programming. For example, you may have habit patterns or behavioral traits that neither one of your parents possess. But if you go back a generation, you could very well find that those habits or behaviors are part of your grandfather's or your great-grandfather's or grandmother's conditioning. And sometimes even physical looks or attributes will skip a generation. So you've got, a family of short people giving birth to, a 6'5" behemoth. That didn't happen to me, by the way. So you probably all heard of or seen a situation where two parents that are both somewhere around 5.5 feet have a child that are 6'3", and that's the example that I can think of that most illustrates the skipping of a generation. So if you go back a generation or two, you'll probably find that that there was a family or even one or two people in a family that were more than 6 feet tall. So the height gene just happened to skip a generation. So let's open up the lines and see if anyone has any comments or questions. So far, we've covered quite a bit in this short period of time.
Hi, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's David. One of the things that I know that I've been studying that has been consistent in a lot of the things that I've researched and studied is it's the power of being able to attain something. A lot of it is driven by not just by what they're talking about affirmations, positive thoughts, and things like that, but actually when it's driven, it's mixed and driven specifically by a powerful emotion. The stronger that emotion, the more likely it is that that can actually manifest into someone's life. Seems to be very, very consistent theme throughout a lot of the things that I've learned.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you mix emotion, any type of strong emotion, faith probably being the one that most directly impacts manifestation. Um, I mean, it's like water and nutrients to a seed. It really is the fuel that allows you to push forward with what you desire. Anyone else? Thank you, David.
No, I totally agree. It's both good and bad. So think in good terms.
You're, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It is. It is. You know, it works regardless of whether or not, you know, your thoughts are productive for you or non-productive for you, or
Yeah, I have to
positive.
catch myself sometimes thinking, I have to change my thought. This is not good. Change it.
Well,
And I do.
you're in a small majority, Felipa, because most people don't. You know, most people haven't exposed themselves to a whole lot of self-development or you know, or have been active in webinars like this or any type of training that teaches you that there's a different way of thinking. Most
Yeah.
people don't realize that there is a different way of thinking, and
Int-
yeah, it is very interesting. And for me, it's it's one of the reasons that I'm very passionate about sharing this information with people. I've seen a lot of people look at me and go, "Oh my God, there's another way to think."
yeah.
You know,
Wow.
we'll talk a little bit about reacting and responding a little bit later, and that's probably one of the lessons, and I teach that quite a bit at a little bit in a little bit more depth in one of the other courses that I teach, Success Puzzle. But you know, that one teaching there has you know, I've witnessed more aha moments and more substantial transformation than any other thing that I've taught. And it's really, you know, the core of that teaching is that you know, there is a different way. There's a different way to conduct yourself when, you know, when you have any situation coming at you. And it's no different than training for a marathon, Felipa, or, you know, going to the gym and training. You build your ability to do that by practicing it, and it's a pretty cool thing. And anyone who really wants to take it on can have tremendous transformation. And this will be part of my ongoing training that I'm setting up. I mentioned that over the last couple of weeks. I'm going to trim down the weekly training and have a weekly training throughout the year, and that'll all of the, and I'll expose you know, whoever wants to take part in that weekly training to all of the material that I teach. So it's and that'll be open free of charge to anyone, initially in Don's downline, but hopefully later on to anyone in Numis. And I'll also be selling that on my website. But so all of that, all of those teachings will be part of our weekly sessions. So sign up now, because spots are going fast. But it really is really is fascinating, and it's really a passion of mine to help people understand that yeah, there is a different way. Thank you, Felipe.
I have a question, Steve.
Yes, Rob.
I was wondering, and I hope I'm not getting ahead of of the webinar on your teaching, but I was wondering if like a subliminal audio, if it will affect or work on this level.
Well, the simple answer to that question is absolutely. And we'll be covering a little bit about that a little bit later on, and I'll stop when I get to that point, and we'll talk a little bit about it. I wasn't going to discuss it too much, other than just to the material that I've got to share with you tonight. But it definitely has an impact. One of the and it doesn't have to necessarily be words. And HoloSync, I don't know if you're familiar with HoloSync. Bill Harris developed this, and it's about wave patterns and their effect on your neural pathways. And there's quite a lot of work that's come out in the last few years around sound waves and their effect. And when you blend that with affirmations, or with any type of real harsh emotion that you've got, there's been some significant transformation. So there, subliminal affirmations. They have them on. You can get them on your computer that flash quickly your goals, or your the things that you want in your life, like your vision board pictures will flash quickly. All of that definitely has an impact. Did that answer your question?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll talk a little bit more about the things that we don't necessarily want subliminally affecting us just a little bit later.
Great.
Yeah. So this is I love this topic, and as you can tell, I could go on all night on this, but we don't want to develop a three-hour webinar tonight. I think we went to two hours last week, and I was kind of exhausted by the end of it. So let's continue on, and let's have a look at what's on the screen here. So it's that second paragraph that the second paragraph here. It says here that I'd really like to go over with a little bit more depth here. It says here this part of you operates in an orderly manner. The law of order is the first law of the universe, by the way. We'll talk a little bit about that in the upcoming weeks as well. But this part of you operates in an orderly manner. By law, it expresses itself through you in feelings and actions. Any thought you consciously choose to impress upon your subconscious over and over becomes fixed in this part of your personality. Fixed ideas will then continue to express themselves without any conscious assistance until they are replaced. They're never really replaced, just they decrease in amplitude of vibration. Fixed ideas are more commonly referred to as habits. But the subconscious mind is the godlike part of you, referred to as spirit. It knows no limits, save for those you consciously choose. So let's just stop there for a minute, because this is a huge paragraph, and I think we probably should give this some serious attention, a little bit more of a look-see. And I'll read it once more, and I'll ask everyone to be very present to this paragraph, because I want to open up the lines and discuss this one. So once again, this part of you operates in an orderly manner. By law, it expresses itself through you in feelings and action. Any thought you consciously choose to impress upon your subconscious over and over becomes fixed in this part of your personality. Fixed ideas will then continue to express themselves without any conscious assistance until they are replaced. The subconscious mind is the godlike part of you, referred to as spirit. It knows no limits save those you consciously choose. There's a lot of information in that one paragraph. Now, who can explain what this means to them? Like, what did you hear in that paragraph?
Steve,
Yeah.
if I recollect the numbers properly, 90% of all of our actions are subconsciously driven. So that means that if we've impressed into our subconscious mind all of these things that are expressed through ourselves as actions, then the thing is that that shows you that the power of that can be very, very good and can be very, very bad if we're not aware of, because after a while we're expressing a habit that's ingrained into us. And most people aren't even aware of what they're actually doing. So it's to expand that level of awareness, I think, is so important, because there's a lot of conditioning that goes on out there that people can get caught up in, and you can become one of the sheep that just follows the herd, or the flock that just goes along with whatever's out there, and just to fit into that role. So I think I don't even know if this emphasizes how powerful the subconscious mind and how much we're taking in and impressing upon it, and how it's actually driving us each and every day.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't. It's hard to express the power of your subconscious mind. I mean, he says here, fixed ideas will then continue to express themselves without any conscious assistance until they're replaced. That's a huge line to understand. And you're right. It is in the mid to low 90% of what we do on a daily basis is not consciously driven. It's subconsciously driven, which is why habits are so hard to break. The way that you do break them is that you really take a good look inward and in towards yourself, and understand what is driving you to do the things that you do. You need to actively work to change those things, and you do that with all the tools that courses like this give you, and other courses similar.
Can I give an example?
Sure can.
I used to be a volunteer for many, many years in addiction centers, and I've always been fascinated by the psychology of the mind. And one of the things that I observed was that these patterns, because as I was observing people that were addicted to various means, not just like drugs, alcohol, could be gambling, like right across the board. And what I was observing was that each one of them was basically displaying certain patterns, and they weren't. And as I was talking to these people, and I wasn't a counselor, I was just there to help out, so I did learn a lot, and they weren't even aware of those patterns that were existing. And one of the successful methods of cutting that addiction was actually somebody that was interrupting the pattern and making those people consciously aware of where they were, because they actually had to come to terms with the idea that they were an addict and they needed help.
Yep.
So it's like it just goes to show you that that power was ingrained into them, and then the pattern that they were displaying was physically just acting out those habits that they had formed through the subconscious.
Yeah, it's a huge turning point when a paradigm or belief that you have or programming that you have is exposed. And in most cases, people don't even know that they have that programming. They're really living unconsciously. They're allowing those beliefs and those habits to drive everything that they do. And the second and paradigms, paradigms do not like to be exposed. And here I'd like to refer to them as cockroaches, because as soon as you shine the light on them, they scurry underneath the furniture. They don't want to be exposed, and they'll protect themselves. And really, what what that really is a protection mechanism for you, and it's to protect you from the unknown. So regardless of how badly your beliefs are, how badly the results you are getting as a result of those beliefs, your subconscious will protect you from anything but that, because it's something that it knows. It's safe. It knows it's something that it's become used to, and anything outside of that is deemed dangerous. So really, what happens is you go into a reaction when someone introduces you to a new idea, and your old beliefs will well up and pour excuses onto to what you're trying to do, and hold you back into that safe place, regardless of whether or not it is. And in fact, I would submit that it's not. It's the most dangerous place you can be, and that's your the comfort zone that those beliefs have created for you.
And I think all of us probably have said to ourselves, that's exactly what my mom is doing, or dad is doing, or grandfather, yeah. And you're thinking, oh no, I'm doing it too.
I've become my mother.
I've become my mom, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How many people have said that? Not me.
Yeah.
Yeah. More my father, I think.
Yeah.
But that's really what happens. But the thing that I think the thing that Hill is trying to convey here is that it's an uphill climb. It's not easy, and your subconscious does really control the show. And who's heard of the word praxis?
The praxis of something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rob, can you explain what that is?
I've heard it through Bob Proctor, and from what I understand, praxis is it kind of like another word for paradigm, or just something that the way that you believe about something? Or I may be off on that, but I've heard him talk about it a lot.
Yeah, close. It's the you're on the right track there. It's knowing that something, very simply put, it's knowing that you can kind of describe this two different ways. So here's an example of it. How many on this call know that exercising more will help them from a health perspective, from an energy perspective, just help them, all around in general?
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone agree with that?
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Does everybody exercise as much as they want to?
No.
Yes, I do.
You do?
Yeah, I train 5 days a week.
That's awesome. Yeah. But what praxis is knowing that something is good for you, but you are unable to go ahead and do those things. So the question is, if you know that it's good for you, why don't we just go ahead and do it? What's holding us back?
Mm-hmm.
And what's holding you back is the belief. So it's that phenomenon that it's that phenomenon of our conscious. Of us consciously knowing that something that we should be doing something, yet we don't do it. And the we don't do it part is the 93% control your subconscious has over you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's praxis. And so that's the battle that we face. So we've got a roughly 7% chance of ever changing, unless we actively go about taking a purposeful approach to changing our beliefs. And we do that through these courses, and we do that through any number of different practices that that I've been exposed to since I started doing this. There's a lot of energy work that you can do. I've been exposed to just a whole slew of different practices, Qigong. There's one sensory evolution technique, which is phenomenal. There's holosync. There's Sedona method. There's there's neuro-linguistic programming. So there's just a lot of different tools that we have at our disposal now that we just didn't have. I think really what we're studying here, this book, was really the only tool that most people had access to do any of this, and this was censored. So any reference to vibration was censored out of this book when it was written. So people were really behind the eight ball for a long time, and I think that we're in a really incredible stage in the evolution of our species. Right now, we've just got access to so much information, probably more information than I'll be ever able to study in my lifetime. So that's great. Thank you very much for sharing. That was fantastic. So one more question, and this is the question I'd like to ask. How can we apply this information? How can we apply what you've just heard into your life?
Steve, I think that we can begin to apply it by, first of all, becoming consciously aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's many different ways to express it, to become consciously aware, and I think actually writing it out, because there's something that always happens with the brain when it travels down your arm and out onto on ink form, and then we actually get to visualize what our thought process is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think then to take action on whatever it is that we've created in the form of those thoughts.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about journaling.
Journaling, and then just like, see, I'm a big proponent that you don't walk up to the edge of the water and put your toe in it. You either go in or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way I look at it. Just like take the nesty plunge and that's it.
Yeah.
And of course there's always going to be days when that is a really big challenge. To want to at least test the waters first before we go in, or
yeah.
But it's just like when I think if we get into the habit of because testing the waters is to me is the comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Diving in is putting ourselves in the uncomfort zone, and I think that that for some strange reason that seems to be the place where we are propelled to learn or change.
Yeah.
Is when it gets really uncomfortable, and because we all look at ourselves in the mirror in the morning, and sometimes I wonder, why are you still there?
And you look in the mirror and you say, I love you, right?
That's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't say that every day.
Well, you should.
I know.
I know it's hard. But for me, it's also, like you say, it's writing it down and repeating it. It's like prayer, it's like affirmation, because you have to change that file in your subconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
I heard an interesting thought with one of the speakers that I listened to on an interview, and that is that we don't own success, we rent it. And the idea was that, and we never really own it fully, because there's a challenge that we have to rise up to each and every day to remind ourselves. So we're literally we're renting it each and every day. So the idea is that we have to constantly, it's like the metaphor that you don't go to the gym 1 week and you're in condition for the rest of your life. But you don't want to diet for 2 weeks and you're okay for the rest of your life. It's the same thing for the mind with all the distractions. You don't go on a course for 1 week or 2 weeks or 6 weeks and think that you've got everything resolved and you're master now for the rest of your life. It's like, I think it's an ongoing thing, and you have to be aware that the effort has to be put in each and every day.
Yeah. Why would it be any different?
Right.
With the amount of things that that when like when we look at how much we have to learn or what we should learn,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
and
was
that's not even close to everything.
yeah, that was
That's
more
just
an observation or a statement than a question. It wouldn't. It isn't any different. It can't be any different. There is no difference. You need to. If you want to stay in shape, from a spiritual perspective, from a mental perspective, you need to work on it. You need to work on it every day, just as you would going to the gym. Why would it be any different? You look at, from, you know, you look at a paradigm and understanding that paradigm. So you talked a little bit about journaling, David. I just wanted to go back to that if I could. You talked about journaling and uncovering some things, and then the things that you uncover, you journal about those. So there's multiple. For me, journaling is hugely important, and you uncover multiple layers of the paradigm. You start peeling back the layers, and when you peel back a layer, something else is exposed, and you journal about that. You get it out of your head and onto paper so that you can look at it in the light of day. And believe me, your paradigm doesn't like that. But if you continue to do that, what you end up with is a full understanding of what your belief is. And from that position, you're much more able to make changes to that. And really, what you've done, if I can use this analogy, is you've emptied your glass, and now what you need to do is use the tools that you're given in courses like these and others to fill it with what you want. But if you stop halfway, well, what's going to happen is your glass is going to fill up with more of what you had. So it's really, your comment about this being an ongoing thing, Dave, is not one that we should take lightly. It's very true. You need to continue to do this, and I don't know if you've done that, and I'm guilty of this as well. Doing this work, and things are going very well, and then you stop, thinking I don't need to do this work anymore, and then all of a sudden you find yourself, in an old familiar place, one that you wanted out of a while back. So, you're there because your old paradigms never go away. They sit there and they wait, and they'll come back if you haven't kept up the battle. You have to continue. So that was my comment on that. Anything else? Thanks for the sharing. It was fantastic.
I have a comment I'd like to add to that.
Excellent, Rob. Great. Thanks.
How you can begin to apply this information. Another thing next to journaling is something that I've tried and it really works for me, is also self-talk, like what I say to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And just an example how I made this happen, it's been a few years back. I used to really hate the sound of my name. Like if somebody said Rob, or anytime I thought about my name, I hated it. I was like, I hate my name. I hate my name. Every time somebody said it, I just got this bad feeling, and I just wished I had another name. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. My middle name is Wayne.
Wayne.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you feel negative about your middle name.
I do.
Well, here's what I did. I said, why do I feel so bad? I asked the question.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I feel so bad about my name? Why? Why do I have to live with this? And when I asked that question, I, studied some of this material, and I said, okay, how can I change this? And so I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Every time I hear my name, every time I say my name, every time I write my name, when somebody refers to my name, I'm going to say out loud, or to myself especially, I love my name. I love my name. And I did this for months, I guess. But anytime my name popped in my head, I would, and I got that negative feeling, I would say, I love my name. But when I said that I love my name, it felt like a lie.
Hmm.
I felt like I was lying to myself, like I was being phony, like this. How can I say this? But I kept saying it over and over and over, and I would try my best to really love my name. Now, Steve, hey, I got the greatest name in the world. I love my name. All of a sudden, I don't know exactly when it was, but it was 5, 6, maybe 7 months afterwards. I noticed that
There was a
I
shift.
loved my name. It was a shift of really, I could really feel that I loved my name, and when somebody would say my name. So I think, and that's the only thing that I did differently is what I said to myself. So self-talk is really another way we can apply this
Absolutely.
information, in my opinion.
Yep, absolutely. He says any thought you consciously choose to impress upon your subconscious over and over becomes fixed in this part of your personality. Isn't that something? And then the transformation happens when the fixed ideas, when you continue to express them, or when you continue to say them over and over again, they begin to express themselves without any conscious assistance. That's the transformation.
Hmm.
That's the piece that's the holy cow. I feel differently about this. Sometimes it's something that you can actually physically feel happening, and others you just wake up and all of a sudden you're changed. You've got a different perspective on it, and not something that you need to consciously work on. It's happening, by virtue of it being impressed upon your subconscious mind. So it's part of the 93% of that drives you. Pretty incredible, isn't it? Yeah, so I really like where he says the subconscious mind is the godlike part of you, referred to as the spirit. It knows no limits, save for those you consciously choose. And it's really saying that the spiritual essence of who you are knows no time, knows no space. It's always here and it's always now, and it only knows now. So as we move forward, we'll be working with this powerful part of ourselves, and we're going to begin to discuss goals. So as I move into to the longer term training. So when we come to understand this, understand our limitless potential, we can really start to make different decisions. We can train ourselves to think big. We can understand that we need to always write our goals in the present tense and state them as though we're already in possession with them, so that what happens is that you start to come from your goals, not go to your goals. So the subconscious mind, allows us to co-create with our creator, and that's why it's referred to as the godlike part of us, because, as it says in almost all of the ancient religious texts, we are all created in the image of our Creator. So this is the part of our mind. This part of our mind knows no limits, and it's going to accept what we suggest as truth. It's like a mirror. It reflects what we put in front of it. The mirror has no ability to reject the image that you put in front of it. The subconscious mind has no ability to reject what the conscious mind impresses upon it, no matter what it is. You can you might feel a little bit uneasy with what your subconscious might feel a little bit uneasy about what your conscious mind is putting towards it, but it accepts it as the truth. And that's the feeling that you got when you started saying that your name, that you loved your name, Rob. And by the way, Rob West sounds like an action hero. So I don't know where you were getting off saying you didn't like your name. Rob West. I saw your name and I said,
I need a sidekick.
"Can I be your sidekick, Rob?"
Rob
Wayne.
West and his Wayne Lundy.
Rob West and his trusty sidekick, Wayne. I'm going to work on that. Oh my God. So this last part to me is really cool. It really is that way. Your conscious mind what it puts, what it sends to the subconscious mind is like the image you put in front of a mirror. It has to accept it. It can't not accept it. You know, early, and we talk about the power of the conscious mind, and we talked about horsepower, and I referred to the fact that this is really where your subconscious is really where all of the horsepower of the mind exists. And I also alluded to the fact that while this is the power center, and here's where we start talking about the blind spot, and we were talking a little bit about that blind spot just just a little while ago, and it's this blind spot that allows us to harness the massive power that exists here. So here's the blind spot. The subconscious mind, as we were just saying, has no ability to tell what is real or what is imagined. It doesn't know whether you really do have $1 million in the bank or not. It's going to accept whatever you tell it. It's your conscious mind that might reject what you're telling it, but your subconscious will accept whatever is presented to it. Napoleon Hill talks a little bit about this on page 165, where he says, "For the present, it's sufficient if you remember that you are living daily in the midst of all manner of thought impulses, which are reaching your subconscious mind without your knowledge. Some of these impulses are negative, some are positive. You are now engaged in trying to help shut off the flow of negative impulses and to aid in voluntarily influencing your subconscious mind through positive impulses of desire." What is it? Desire. There are many ways that we get bombarded with negative impulses of thought. And this is hugely important because how you allow these thoughts to anchor in your subconscious mind determines your conditioning. It really influences your overall general attitude towards all situations. I see it regularly. Some and it affects me too. It affects all of us. I'm consciously aware of those negative impulses that happen, and you can't get away from them. But what you can do is choose to process them properly, and I don't always do that. I don't always do that, and what happens is I start to the indication or the thermometer that tells you whether or not you are doing this properly or not doing this properly are your feelings. So if you feel yourself in a low state, like in a low state, and then you look around and you see CNN on the TV, or you've got you hear bickering neighbors, or you're talking to an old friend who just wants to share negative stories. You're not handling it properly. Let your feelings tell you whether or not you are or not, and then just take a step back and slow it down. So, what are some of the ways that that we're bombarded with these negative impulses of thought? Who can share some of these? I shared a couple, but who can share some of their own thoughts on this?
I'd like to share something.
Yeah, please, Rob.
In studying marketing, the media and commercials.
Yeah.
Is really big. We have constant bombarding with, especially food marketing.
Yeah.
Huge. Eat,
yes.
eat. So that's what I've noticed.
Huge in that industry, isn't it?
Mega.
Yeah. Subliminal and otherwise. I know subliminal is against the law, but sometimes it is. Sometimes subliminal advertising is right in your face. Anyone else?
Since we live in the beautiful city of Ottawa, and for Rob and Felipe, this is our equivalent of Washington. So we have a lot of bureaucratic thought processes that just entangle us up into, like in turning us around, like with the kind of news and with the kind of things that we're seeing, is we're always from the news and from stories being told more about negative stories and negative consequences of things versus what good is going on out there.
Yeah, you want negative.
Politicians are an example of it.
Oh yeah, you want negative impulses of thought sit in on a parliamentary proceeding. It's crazy. I mentioned one CNN, and you know, if you've taken any of my courses, you've heard me rag on CNN. You know, but this is a perfect example of repetitive negativity. And this one morning I was, and this was before I shut down CNN altogether. I don't know if you guys remember, but India was expanding their nuclear program, and at the same time they were testing their rocket technology. So the story was about the rocket technology with an undertone of nuclear with a nuclear program. So I saw the graphic pictures, and CNN's great for this. I saw the graphic pictures of the rockets taking off, and you can imagine, you know, they built this picture of nuclear warheads aimed at Pakistan, you know, with the sort of the newscast that was going on behind the scenes of this picture. So I was getting ready to go to work, so I would walk by the TV and see this and say to myself, oh, that's not going to be good. And then I'd head up to take a shower, and when I came back down to grab breakfast, I'd pass the TV again, and there were the rockets taking off again. I'd say, oh, that's not going to be good. And then I'd finish breakfast and walk by the TV on the way out my door to go to work, and there were the rockets going off again. You know, the same pictures. And it's wild. And some people watch this all day long. I find it incredible. Now, so, you know, people have asked me, you know, what's the one thing that I can do right now to, you know, to change, you know, my negative thoughts and whatnot. I said, do you watch CNN? Yeah, shut it off. I'll tell them that's the first thing you should do. Get away from that influence. You know, some of the other ones are talk shows. Have you ever watched talk shows? The View in the morning? Oh my God, it's unbelievable. You know, gossip rags. My grandmother had a whole pile of these gossip rags, and I always used to flip through them when I'd go and visit her, and I just, you know, they just focused on the negative or the misfortune of others, and that's really what those rags did. You know, so understand that, you know, the understanding that we're surrounded by this negativity is huge, and you need to be on constant guard. And, you know, as Rob, you said, it sells. It sells. It sells newspapers. You know, they tried a positive newspaper and no one bought it. You know, I worked for the Ottawa Citizen here, the local newspaper, and it was a very happy day when there was a disaster that claimed the lives of a lot of people, because you knew that it was going to double the circulation for the newspaper that day. Yeah, it's amazing. It really is amazing. You know, I saw that. I didn't work in the editorial department, but I always went up there when something happened, because I was just fascinated by the different energy in that in the newsroom when something like that happened. So a lot of times, you know, we'll leave the TV, or we hear people that leave the TV on these channels while they're doing other things, and they do it to fill the silence. And you know, we'll say that it's only they'll say that it's only background noise, and we'll say, well, you know, we'll ask them about it, or I'll ask them about it, and they say, I don't even listen to it. It keeps me company. But, you know, the thing that they need to remember is that your subconscious absorbs everything. And this is what you're talking about earlier, Rob, about subliminal messaging. And really, whether you're listening to it or you're not listening to it, your subconscious absorbs everything that you experience. And at some level, if you remember, we're processing 400 billion bits of data. So your subconscious has the ability to take in that background noise without even breaking a sweat. So everything you see, smell, feel, or have any emotion to is stored there forever, whether or not that that you allow that to impact you for the for the remainder of your life or not. It's stored there forever. So earlier we talked about the fact that your subconscious mind filters through that amount of information. So it's always processing from this ocean of information that's continuously coming at us. So we're only consciously aware of about 2,000 bits of information per second, but that doesn't change the fact that the subconscious mind picks up everything. So this is a very valuable information. And again, as we move on with the training, I'm gonna actually show you how to work with this information and use it to your benefit, because we now know that and have discovered scientifically how this works. So that all of those different tools that I mentioned earlier are all at our disposal. And as I learn more of these, and I'm always fascinated by by energy, especially now energy, anything around energy, because I get that we're all energy. So how we manipulate that energy is critical to how we develop and how we how much abundance we're able to receive. So but for now, let's just summarize by saying that you become consciously aware of certain information, and the information you become aware of is directly related to the questions that you ask yourself. So in reality, you actually program your subconscious mind to find specific answers, and as a faithful servant, it will do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So yeah, even when you're asleep, it's at work. So think back. How many of you have experienced going to bed with a question, a problem, or you're confused about something, and at 3 a.m. you find yourself suddenly awake, and you have the answer you've been looking for? I know I have. So what I sort of look at it, I think of it as a team of workers that are diligently searching out the answers that I've asked for. I do this all the time. And I know, people that I'm close to that do it a lot too, and are quite successful at doing it. I call them my guys. People call them guides. I call them my guys, and I put it out to my guys, and I have faith that the answer will come back, and the answer will always come back. The key here, and the only job you have, is to be aware of it. Because it's not going to come in a fax or a FedEx to your door. You need to be aware of the answer. And a lot of times, we slough it off to a dream, or we slough it off to a coincidence, or we completely are so tied up in what's going on in our lives that the answer that's being presented to us just totally eludes us. So I'd like every one of you to be able to work with this process, and the first step is to start asking yourself better questions with regard to your goal or your dream. So let's brainstorm a little bit here. I want you to think about specific questions that you could be asking yourself, the answers for which you know will make a real significant difference in your lives. So let's throw it out there and just throw them out there as they come to your head.
I've got something that I picked up from actually from a book called Breaking the Rules, and not only it was like what questions could you ask, but how you frame that question, because very often if something doesn't happen the way that we expected it to or wanted it to, then we ask ourselves, what did I do wrong? And what they talked about in this book was like rephrasing that, because that's implying that you actually did something wrong, when in fact you may not have done something wrong. So it was like it was saying, instead of asking what I did wrong, what more could I do right? So just changing the way that the whole question was framed.
Yeah, reframe it.
Reframe it. So like there was a whole lot of things that came out of that book, and that's really one of the ones that really stuck in my head ever since I read it.
You know, I talked to Scott Blanley. He's on the Ottawa Numis team. I think he's working with Julie here, and
Yeah.
he heard what I did, and I actually talked a little bit at Julie's place one time when they had when they had a PBR there, and he came up and he said he read an interesting book where they got you to, let's see if I can remember this. They got you to ask when you're doing your affirmations, and this is kind of a little bit off topic, but it's sort of, what you said reminded me of this, and it was really it changed your affirmation from an affirmation to a question. And the question was, so if I my affirmation was, you know, let me think of an affirmation here. If your affirmation is, I have $1 million in the bank, I currently have $1 million in the bank, the question, he would switch that around and say, you know, why do I have $1 million in the bank? And what that does, and it made a lot of sense when he explained it to me, and what that does is it sends a message to your subconscious mind to search out the answers to solve the question that you're asking, and that's the $1 million in the bank. So your subconscious is constantly seeking out and vibrating at the level of the answers to the question that you're asking. So it's really using the law of attraction to your advantage, and your subconscious will do that. It will put you'll vibrate at the level of the question that you're asking, and the answers will start to come. I thought that was brilliant.
I think so too.
Yeah. Ping Scott on that, Philippe, if you want to learn a little bit more about that, or I can. There was a book, or there was a teacher that taught that. So I'd like to learn a little bit more. If there's a book, I'd love to pick it up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. Yeah, John. I mean, there's a lot of teachers out there that have great stuff on that. John Assaraf has a lot of great stuff on that as well. Yeah. So he's one of my favorites. Yeah. But, you can ask simple questions as well, like what can I do to increase my productivity? These are all simple questions, and the answers are critical to you moving to a different level of vibration, to different results in your life. Yeah, how can I be of greater service? What activity can I do right now that will move me closer to my goal? How can I increase my monthly cash flow? How can I be more creative in finding solutions to any any problem, really? You fill in the blank. What's not working in my life what is not working in my life that I could do less of? There's a question. Let your subconscious figure that out. That's a huge question, and your subconscious mind has unlimited power. So throwing a question out like that, to you and I consciously trying to figure that out, that seems a little bit ambivalent. It seems a little bit vague. But your subconscious mind is going to start rooting through some of the things that you could be doing less of, and it'll send those answers back to you. So they're all really great questions, and I'm sure that there are plenty more that you guys can think of. And if you do, throw them up on the Facebook page. And I'd suggest that you write these down and get grounded in this exercise. Start journaling about them, because once you get those answers, and journal the answers that you get back, you see it at a whole different depth. You see the answer at a whole different depth, and then you start. It's all part of peeling back the layers on your paradigm. But for now, why don't we move and have a look at page number 167, where Napoleon Hill introduces the 7 major positive and negative emotions. And the 7 positive emotions are desire, faith, love, sex, enthusiasm, romance, and hope. And he goes on to say, and I quote, "There are other positive emotions, but these are the 7 most powerful and the ones most commonly used in creative effort. Master these 7 emotions, and they can be mastered only by use." We talked about that. "And the other positive emotions will be at your command when you need them. Remember in this connection that you are studying a book which is intended to help you develop a money consciousness by filling your mind with positive emotions. One does not become money conscious by filling one's mind with negative emotions." That's pretty straightforward, isn't it? And next he lists the 7 major negative emotions, which are fear, jealousy, hatred, revenge, greed, superstition, and anger, which he follows by saying, "Positive and negative emotions cannot occupy the mind at the same time. One or the other must dominate. It's your responsibility to make sure that positive emotions constitute the dominating influence of your life, of your mind. Here, the law of habit will come to your aid. Form the habit of applying and using the positive emotions. Eventually, they will dominate your mind so completely that the negatives cannot enter it." He really points out that here that it's impossible for us to focus on any 2 of these emotions or feelings simultaneously. We can only focus on one of these emotions at any given time. There are many times when we appear to be thinking of more than one thing at a time. When we're daydreaming, we think, "Oh man, my mind's all over the place." Well, it's not. It's really only on one thing at a time. And some people will call this multitasking, but in all reality, we actually only think about one thing at a time. We're linear thinkers. So an example of that, often you might be thinking of a business meeting while you're driving, but you're only, you're driving and you're thinking about the business meeting. So you would think that would be 2 things, but you're only really giving thought to the meeting. The driving is already programmed. So once you learned how to drive, it was not long before you began to do it subconsciously. At first you're correcting the steering wheel and you're consciously doing it. You're going, "Oh my God, I got to turn a little bit left. I got to turn a little bit right." But once you learned that then it was turned over to your subconscious mind, and you do that now without even thinking about it. In fact, you can put your lipstick on. David, I've seen you do that. You can put your lipstick on when you're did you?
You have?
I just wanted to see if you're still awake there, Dave.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God!
Got my attention for that one.
For everyone who's on the call, I've never seen Dave put his makeup on while driving. So once you learn how to drive, though, and getting serious again here, it's not long before it's turned over to your subconscious, and it just happens, almost magically. How often do you think about correcting your steering on the road? You just do it. All unconscious thought about driving happened when we were learning how to drive. In fact, I remember how it was for me. Most of us can probably remember how it was for them too. But I'm sure that if you learn how to drive a manual transmission, man, that was a lot of thought, a lot of conscious thought. But if you think back to when you first learned how to drive a manual transmission, I just think about the beginning of learning anything that we're doing, playing the guitar, or learning how to hit a ball in baseball, or learning how to skate. All of these things are very difficult and very conscious efforts in the beginning. And very quickly, I played hockey last night with my son, and I was thinking about that when I was looking over my notes here for tonight's call. I do that with very little effort. And my son, he's he's still kind of learning. And I've played hockey for a lot longer than he has, and it was really fun to be out there and to see that that's not something that that's something that's part of my subconscious. I just know how to do it. I know how to turn. I know how to balance my body to turn quickly. I know how to spin on my skates. It's just all subconscious to me. And but it wasn't at the beginning. It was very difficult. So it just makes sense to me that while one thought is being originated in the conscious mind, the other thoughts are all running. So when we're talking about driving and thinking about your about your business meeting, it's almost like we operate like a computer. We can have one main program that we're working on that's filling up the screen, while we have several other programs running in the background performing their functions, but they're just minimized. They're not on our main screen. So to me, the important thing becomes, what can we do to gain conscious control of the main program? What are some of the ways that we can exercise this responsibility that Napoleon Hill talks about when we find ourselves in negative situations? So, why don't if everybody can participate in this little piece here, let's generate some ideas as to how we can gain control over our thoughts.
I think one of the ways that, because I learned when I was doing like a law of attraction course with Michael Lozier,
Mm-hmm.
he was always referring to the fact that most people can tell you what they don't want versus what they do want. So if you can, like Napoleon Hill refers to, if you can clearly define your definiteness of purpose, and if you can outline your why, I think that's going to propel you in more the right direction and create more clarity as to where you're going. And I think it's when we don't define these parameters that the next shiny object syndrome, being scattered, not being focused, I think those things come into play, and we just go all over the place with our energy and our thoughts.
Or the next not so shiny object.
Or the next not so shiny.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How come their grass is greener?
Exactly. I hate my grass. But it really is that. You hit on a key point there. If you have a spot on the horizon that you're traveling towards, it doesn't matter how many storms blow up. That point on the horizon is going to be there. It really allows you to battle those storms more effectively and get through them faster because you know where you're going. You have a point on the horizon. If you don't have that, then your mind's all over the place. You really don't have any. How can I put it? You don't have any. You don't have a compass. That you can use to get back on track. In fact, without that point on the horizon, you don't really need the compass. And in fact, you're going in all different directions because there's really no purpose to what you're doing. Does everybody agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it really is. We really need to think about what we're thinking about, and I mean in concert with having that your goals and your purpose defined. Thinking about what we're thinking about, even when we do have all of those things in place, is hugely important. And understand that we really should want to exercise this responsibility that Hill speaks about. He calls it a responsibility to maintain positive thoughts. It's really your responsibility to make sure that positive emotions constitute the dominating thoughts of your conscious mind. They're both powerful tools, and you need to take responsibility for them. And it's actually quite simple, but it's not always easy. It's really a matter of react or respond. And this is, what I was talking a little bit about earlier, and I know that a lot of people don't realize that they have that this is a choice that is available to everyone, to them, to them, to their sister, to their brother, to that person down the street that they hate, that they're always getting into a fight with. And they just have a habit of just reacting instead of responding. And there are probably some other things that we do in a day that we just don't think about, but that might not be serving us very well. But this react and respond, most people, and this is really an animalistic response. And just trying to think of the author. He was in a German prison camp. Anyway, so it was I can't think of his name, but really he came up with the concept. I should know his name because I've taught this course about 100 times now. But he really in the camp he realized that no one had control over his thoughts. Only he had control over his thoughts. And no matter what people did to him, he had the choice to react in a certain way. And most people, and this is an animalistic response, and it's not a response, it's a reaction, where you have a situation and immediately following you have a reaction. But we're the only animals, we're the only beings on Earth that have the ability to separate the situation from the reaction. And when we do that, we choose to respond. We choose our response. We're the only animals that have the ability to do that. And that's a huge, when people understand that, and this is something that you can practice, and you can practice it on things that you typically react to in a way where an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours later, you look back on that and you say, geez, I didn't react very well to that. And that's because you reacted, you didn't respond. You have the ability to stop and say, here's how I typically react to that. I'm choosing not to react right now. I'm just going to sit here for a second and really process this, and I'm going to respond the way that I want to respond. And that's a huge, that grants you huge power in any situation. And I would put it out to you to just try that when you come across a situation that you typically react to. Take that extra second or two to respond the way that you want to respond. Now, driving, we do it out of habit, and it's probably one of the better things we do. Well, not me. I get into a lot of accidents and I get a lot of speeding tickets, but most people, it's one of the better things you do habitually. And so let's ask the question: what are some of the things that you do habitually? So the question is, what are some of the things that you do habitually that really don't serve you very well? That's kind of the question that you need to be asking yourself. I'm not going to get people to comment on that here on the webinar, but the question that you need to ask yourself are your habits getting you the best results? I can give some examples of some of the things that people do out of habit that don't, and maybe you can identify some of these yourself. Identify with some of these yourself. Maybe you put things off or procrastinate a little bit too much. I've got my hand up, by the way. Avoid contacting people when we should. Hand still up. Maybe you're in the habit of showing up 5 minutes late on a regular basis. Hand still up. Not really consciously choosing this, but this is part of your programming, and it's another great time to do a checkup from the neck up, as they say. And now so we're right at the end of the webinar here, and before we wrap things up, If you can just have a look at the last two sentences of this chapter. Sorry, we're ending this right at the right time because my voice is starting to go. Pardon me. So let's look at the last two sentences of this chapter, and you can find that on page 169 of your book, or you can see it on the screen. The last two sentences say, faith is the only known agency which will give your thoughts a spiritual nature. Faith and fear make poor bedfellows. Where one is found, the other cannot exist. So if your conscious thoughts are fear, doubt, confusion, or worry, you're not going to be able to reason properly. Because when fear enters the room, when fear enters, logic leaves the room. And remember, we can only process one emotion at a time. So if any of those are your predominant thoughts, well, guess where you are. You know, we need to have a faith that these processes that we're studying over the past few weeks actually work. And really, the only way to have faith is through understanding. So learning about these things, don't believe anything that I say. Always validate what I say. You know, validate anything that you hear. And the only way to gain understanding is through what we're doing right now. We're, you know, continued study, and that's why I strongly suggest that once we complete this after next week, you stay tuned for the next step in our group, and that's to make a commitment to continue to participate in the weekly study weekly study program that I'm going to be setting up. So we're going to begin that, to study the important process of altering our paradigms. You know, we've got into it a little bit, but we'll be getting into that more heavily as we go along. And working to understand the power of the subconscious mind and how we work with this, how we can work with this power to, to really go after and achieve our goals. And we'll begin to uncover things like the six steps that allow you to easily change a habit. We'll also begin to understand and work with the 7 master universal laws that govern the way that we think and the way that we behave. And of course, we specifically work with the 6 intellectual faculties that we that I showed you in week 1. And we'll really begin to build on those mental muscles. We'll take you to the gym and allow you to gain conscious control over that of the phenomenal power that exists in your subconscious mind. We'll begin to crystallize the image of your mind, of what you truly desire, but also discover and implement the exact steps that will that will have that desire materialize in your results. So for now, though, that's it. That's all we have for tonight. But before we go, I'd just like to do a quick review of what we covered here tonight, just to refresh your memory. So we covered a lot of ground. We covered Chapter 12, the subconscious mind, and we started off by discussing the power of the subconscious mind. And then we spoke a little bit about the role that faith plays in this part of our mind, the huge role that faith plays. We also talked about the genetic and environmental programming that exists in the subconscious mind. And we also talked a bit about the subconscious mind as the godlike part of our being. After that, we discussed the methods of shutting down the flow of negative thought impulses to this part of our mind. And we spent just the last few minutes there talking about the 7 major positive and negative emotions that Napoleon Hill refers to in this chapter. And we finished just a second ago by talking about how faith and fear make poor bedfellows. Okay, so one more week to go. Next week, what I'd like you to do is to read the chapter titled The Epilogue. The epilogue, How to Outwit the 6 Ghosts of Fear. This is one of the most significant and important chapters in the book, and I know I've said that about almost all of these chapters. I can't unsay it. And when you read it, if you haven't already, you'll understand what I'm saying. You're really going to enjoy next week's webinar, and I think you're going to find it, the information and our discussions around what Hill writes in this epilogue will be transformational. So that means we're going to be skipping chapter 13 and 14, and I've mentioned this before. I really encourage everyone to read the entire book, but we're not going to study the chapters titled "The Brain and Intuition" for our purposes here, but they are definitely worth a read. So remember to support yourself and the other people in this webinar, and the people who maybe haven't been able to dial in with your comments on the Facebook page. So your comments or your aha moments, any questions that you still have. I'd love to see the answers that some of the others that are answered without my help, because it just gives everybody a different perspective on a question, and provides people with a different perspective in the answer. So put those up. Anything that you discover, anything that you went, oh my God, look at what happened to me as a result of the way I've been thinking. Throw that up onto Facebook. People love to see that. I love to see that. And if you've got any personal questions or anything that you don't want to share on Facebook, of course, you can always send it to my email at steve.w.lundy@gmail.com. And I'm more than happy to get on a call with you too if you need something explained in a little bit more depth. So I'd like you to also, this is where I get stern, complete the homework in the workbook. If you don't complete the homework in the workbook, you're not getting everything that you can out of it. The workbook is a little outdated. It's got references to my old company and my partners, but the content in it is fantastic, and I would really encourage you to play this full out. And I think that's about it. Is there anything anyone would like to add?
Another great job, Steve. Really appreciate it, and the information just continues to amaze me as to like you've done it 100 times, and as you go through it, I think it's like rediscovering and rediscovering and rediscovering. It's just like it's just so amazing. It's just like there's so many layers to this.
Well, thank you, David. I mean, really, you're right. The information is incredible. And every time I go through it, I go, oh my God, it's just there's so much information in this book. Rob, you're a Bob Proctor fan, so you know that he'll read this book until the day he dies. And, he's said he gets something different out of it every time he reads it, because every time he reads it, he's different. And that's kind of interesting. And at first I went, come on, Bob. But, every time I do, I go through this, I see it from a different perspective, because I am different as well, and I'm be surprised if everyone doesn't have that same experience. Thanks, David. Anyone else? Well, I would like to thank everyone for their insightful comments and their sharing tonight on the call. It just really enhances these webinars, and it's why I really like to have an open conversation as we go through this. There is a lot of information to share, but I prefer to have less information, more precise information, and a whole lot more sharing, because that's it's in the sharing and it's in the time between webinars where most of the growth occurs, and where most of the transformation occurs, when you start to apply in your life what you've heard or read in the book. And so that experiential part of it is for me is huge. So thank you once again for all your sharing. And as in all weeks past, I'd like everyone to have fun and stay on purpose, and have a great week.
Thanks, Steve. Have a great one yourself.
Thank you.